I knew something was wrong the moment I walked into the company auditorium. 998 employees packed the room, shoulder to shoulder, all of them whispering, confused, anxious, waiting for our CEO to walk on stage. The lights were too bright, the air too warm, and everyone had that same look, the look people get when they know a big announcement is coming, but they can't tell whether it's good or bad. I was standing near the back, holding my tablet against my chest, trying to steady my breathing. I had been working at this company for almost 5 years. I knew its rhythm, its moods, but that day already felt wrong. Even before my boss texted me, I sensed something building, something heavy, like the air before a storm. My phone buzzed. One short message. Get to the front. CEO wants you visible. Visible. That alone made my stomach twist. People like me didn't get called to the front. I wasn't upper management. I wasn't some fancy executive with a tailored suit and a gold pen. I was just a hardworking employee who showed up early, stayed late, and kept the company's operations running smoothly behind the scenes. I was the type of person no one noticed unless something broke. But I went anyway because refusing wasn't an option. As I made my way forward through the crowd, I felt people shifting, giving me space. Some nodded politely, some looked nervous, and a few avoided eye contact like they already knew what was coming. I tried to swallow the fear, tightening my throat. I kept reminding myself that I hadn't done anything wrong. If anything, I had done more than what my job required. The CEO finally walked out, looking confident and pleased. He stood at the podium, smiled like he had already won something huge, and the room fell silent instantly. That man had power, not the inspirational, uplifting kind, but the kind that could ruin a person's life with a single sentence. We all felt it. His voice echoed through the auditorium as he announced the biggest update in the company's history. A $4.1 billion merger that would change the future of the industry and secure our place as market leaders. The crowd clapped, not out of excitement, but out of fear of what not clapping might look like. Behind him, huge screens lit up with graphs, numbers, logos, promises about growth. Everything looked perfect. Everything looked staged. Then my boss stepped up beside him. That was my second warning sign. My boss never got stage time during big announcements. But there he was, gripping the microphone like he was about to expose something, and his smile wasn't kind, it was sharp. Then he said my name, loud enough for all 998 employees to hear. Every head turned toward me. My chest went cold. I forced myself not to step back. He said, "Let's talk about people who hold this company back. People who slow us down. People who create problems instead of solving them." My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear anything else. I felt the blood rushing in my ears. My hands were shaking, but I kept them behind my back so no one would see. That's when he pointed at me. "This one right here," he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "This one is the reason we almost lost the merger. This one almost cost this company billions. This one is trash." The room gasped. No one expected that. Not in public. Not like this. I felt something inside me snap. Quietly, painfully, but definitely. It wasn't just the insult. It wasn't even the humiliation of 998 employees staring at me like I had suddenly become a criminal. It was the realization that they were lying. They were using me. They were throwing me under the bus to protect their deal, their bonuses, their careers. I had worked too hard for this company to be called trash. I had sacrificed birthdays, weekends, vacations, sleep, and peace of mind just to keep their systems running. I wasn't perfect, but I wasn't what they were making me out to be. Before I could respond, the CEO stepped in and said, "You're fired. Leave your badge. Leave your device. Security will escort you out." The room stayed silent, almost frozen, as if even the air couldn't believe what was happening. 2 security guards approached, not aggressively, but firmly enough that I knew resisting would make things worse. I handed over my badge with trembling fingers, still trying to understand how my life had just flipped upside down in seconds. Employees looked at me with a mix of pity, confusion, and fear, because what happened to me could happen to any of them. My boss smirked like he had won some private battle. The CEO moved on with his speech, as if firing me was just a small interruption. What none of them knew, not the CEO, not my boss, not the guards escorting me out, was that I had information. Information that could destroy their $4.1 billion merger in minutes. Information they never thought I'd keep, because they never thought I'd fight back. As I walked out of the auditorium, humiliated in front of almost 1,000 people, something inside me shifted. The fear that had controlled me for years slowly burned into something else. Something stronger. Something sharper. They thought calling me trash would break me. They had no idea what they had just started. Because if they wanted to use me as their scapegoat, if they wanted to ruin my name, my career, my dignity, then they had no idea how far I was willing to go to take everything back and expose every lie they built this company on. What happened next wasn't planned. It wasn't even something I thought I was capable of. But the moment I realized what they were hiding and how badly they needed that merger to go through, I knew exactly what I had to do. And they never saw it coming. Because sometimes the person they think is the weakest becomes the one holding the detonator. And by the time they realized what I had in my hands, it was already too late. I didn't say a single word as the security guards walked beside me, but inside, my thoughts were racing so fast it felt like the ground could fall away at any moment. I wasn't angry yet, not in the loud, explosive way most people imagine. It was a slower kind of fire, one that simmered deep in my chest and grew with every step I took away from the auditorium. My boss's voice kept replaying in my head, the way he said trash, the way the CEO looked so certain, the way the whole room went silent, like I had suddenly become someone to stay away from. That silence hurt more than the insult. As the guards led me to the exit, I could see my reflection in the glass walls. I looked smaller than I felt. My face was pale, my eyes wide, and there was this mix of shock and something else, something I hadn't seen in myself in a long time. Maybe determination, maybe disbelief, maybe both. When we reached the lobby, one of the guards, the younger one, glanced at me with sympathy. He didn't say anything, probably because he couldn't, but the look in his eyes said he knew something about this didn't feel right. The older guard just kept walking, doing his job like he had done it 100 times before. They stopped once they reached the final door. The older guard cleared his throat and said softly, "This is as far as we go." I nodded, even though my throat felt tight. He handed me a small envelope containing my personal items that had been on my desk, my keys, a pen, and a folded piece of paper I kept taped to my monitor with a reminder scribbled in my own handwriting. "Don't let them change who you are." I almost laughed at the irony. As soon as the doors closed behind me, the outside air felt colder than it should have. The parking lot looked different, too. Emptier, wider, almost unfamiliar. I stood there for a moment, trying to breathe, trying to understand how everything could go wrong so fast. Then my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't my boss. It was my friend Michelle, one of the only people in the company I trusted. "Are you okay?" I heard what happened. "Meet me at the coffee shop across the street. Hurry." Her message made my heart beat faster. If she had heard that quickly, it meant word was spreading. And if word was spreading, then whatever my boss and the CEO had planned was already rolling out. I crossed the street quickly, hands deep in my pockets, head down. I didn't want anyone to recognize me. Even though I had just lost my job, I still felt like I had something to hide. Or maybe I felt like they had something to hide. The bell above the coffee shop door rang as I stepped inside. Michelle was already sitting in a corner booth, drumming her fingers on the table. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Sit," she whispered urgently. I slid into the seat. Before I could say anything, she leaned in. "What happened up there wasn't normal. I've been at this company 8 years, and I've never seen anything like that. They don't fire people publicly like that. They don't humiliate people. They usually do it quietly in HR. This was planned." My chest tightened. "I know." She looked at me closely. "Do you know why?" I hesitated. I didn't want to drag her into anything dangerous. But I also knew I couldn't handle this alone. Not with what I knew. Not with what they had tried to do. "I think they're covering something up," I said slowly. "Something about the merger. Something big." Michelle's eyebrows pulled together. "You think they blamed you on purpose?" "I don't think." "I know." Before she could respond, someone else walked into the coffee shop. A tall man in a dark coat, scanning the room. Instinctively, I lowered my head. I didn't know who he was, but my gut told me not to be seen. Michelle noticed. What's wrong? Nothing. Just keep talking. She did, but she lowered her voice even more. You're not the only one they've been targeting, she said. 2 analysts from the compliance team disappeared last week. Not fired, not transferred, just gone. No one is allowed to talk about it. My breath caught. I knew about those analysts because I had seen their final report, a report that was never supposed to be released, a report that exposed details about the merger, details that would have shut the entire deal down instantly. I didn't tell Michelle that yet. I didn't want to say it out loud while the man in the coat was still looking around. Michelle, I whispered, what do you think they want? She swallowed hard. To keep everyone quiet until the merger goes through. Once it does, they get their money. They move on. They don't care who they hurt in the process. I leaned back slightly, feeling the full weight of what she just said. They fired me, I said quietly, because I know something that can stop their deal. Michelle stared at me. Do you really? I nodded. For the first time since everything happened, I saw fear flicker across her face. Not fear of me, but fear for me. Then you need to be careful, she whispered. If they're willing to do what they did today in front of 900 people, imagine what they'd do behind closed doors. I didn't want to think about that, but she wasn't wrong. I pulled the envelope from my pocket and took out the folded note from my desk. The reminder I had written for myself. When I placed it on the table, Michelle looked confused. What's that? Proof that I didn't forget who I was, I said quietly. Proof that they couldn't change me. Before she could respond, the bell rang again. The man in the dark coat had moved closer. Too close. His eyes scanned our booth. I turned my face slightly away, pretending to look out the window. Michelle's hand tightened around her coffee cup. You think he's here for you? She whispered. I don't know, I whispered back. But I don't want to find out. She reached into her bag and slid a small flash drive toward me. What's this? I asked. The last backup of the internal server before they wiped the logs, she said. I downloaded it in case something went wrong. I didn't know it would come to this, but maybe it'll help you. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. This was more than help. This was ammunition. Before I could thank her, the man in the coat stepped up to our table. He stared at me. Then he asked, Are you the one who used to work at Stratton Dynamics? Michelle and I froze. I didn't answer. He waited. The entire coffee shop seemed to fall silent around us. Then he leaned a little closer. They want to talk to you, he said quietly. It's important. A chill ran through me. I didn't know who they were. But I knew one thing. Whoever wanted to talk to me wasn't doing it for my benefit. Michelle kicked me under the table, panic in her eyes. I stood up slowly, not because I trusted him, but because running would make everything worse. My pulse hammered so hard it hurt. The man stepped aside and motioned toward the door. Michelle grabbed my wrist, her voice trembling as she whispered, Whatever happens, don't go anywhere alone with him. I nodded, even though fear made my chest feel tight. I followed the man toward the exit, every step filling me with more questions than answers. I didn't know where he was taking me. I didn't know what they wanted. I didn't know how much danger I was in. All I knew was this. The merger wasn't just shady. It was dangerous. And now, I wasn't just a fired employee. I was a problem they needed to solve. A problem they wouldn't let walk away. And somewhere deep inside, even though fear tried to swallow me whole, there was still something burning, something that whispered that this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. If you want, I can continue with the next 1,000 words, build the danger further, or expand the conspiracy even more. The man in the dark coat walked ahead of me with slow, steady steps, like he already knew I wouldn't run. Maybe he was right. Maybe a part of me wanted to know exactly how deep this whole thing went. The street outside the coffee shop felt colder, like the temperature had dropped the moment he opened the door. Michelle stayed inside, watching through the glass with worry written all over her face. I kept my breathing steady and forced myself not to look back too many times. He stopped near a black SUV, parked a little away from the main road. The windows were tinted, and the engine was off, but something about it felt too quiet, too prepared. He opened the back door and nodded like he expected me to climb in without question. I didn't move. Who's inside? He hesitated. It was a tiny thing, barely noticeable, but it told me he wasn't used to being questioned. Someone who wants answers, he said. That didn't help. Someone from a company? No. Government? No. My heart dropped a little. If it wasn't the company, and it wasn't the government, then what exactly was I walking into? Look, he said quietly. You can stand here all day and freeze, or you can get in and hear what they have to say. You still have a choice. I didn't believe that for a second. But curiosity mixed with fear until it became something heavier. I took a slow breath, stepped toward the open door, and got inside. The interior smelled like leather and cold air. A woman sat on the opposite side, wearing a gray blazer and holding a tablet on her lap. She looked up at me with calm, steady eyes that didn't match the tension in the air. Close the door, she said. I did. The SUV felt even smaller after that. She studied me for a moment, as if she already knew everything about me but wanted to confirm it herself. You're the one they fired today. I didn't answer. She didn't need confirmation. She already knew. I've been following your company's merger for months, she said calmly. Stratton Dynamics isn't being honest with the public, and the people leading the deal aren't being honest with their employees either. That sent a shiver through me. Who are you? Someone who needs the truth, she said. You can call me Rena. That's all you need for now. She tapped her tablet, and the screen lit up with numbers, reports, charts, things I had seen during my time at the company, but never in this order. This is the real merger summary, she said. Not the cleaned-up version they showed the board. Not the stage presentation they prepared for the employees. I leaned closer. My stomach twisted when I recognized one of the files. The same file the analysts had been working on before they disappeared. The same file that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. How did you get this? I whispered. I have connections, she said simply. But what I need is someone who knows what part of this is real, and someone who knows what part of this is missing. I didn't say anything. Her eyes studied my face carefully. Your boss didn't fire you because you made a mistake, she continued. He fired you because you're the only one left who has access to the original data. You're the only one they couldn't control. My chest tightened. Hearing it from her, hearing it stated so plainly, made everything feel sharper. You're saying they fired me to protect the merger? No, she corrected softly. They fired you because you're the only person who can ruin it. I exhaled slowly. Why do you care about stopping the merger? She paused, her expression changing just slightly. Because it's not just a merger. It's a cover. It's a way to bury financial losses and legal violations under a new corporation name. When the deal goes through, the public records change, the liability disappears, and the investors move on with billions. I stared at her. I had suspected something shady, but this was bigger than I imagined. So what do you want from me? Everything you know, she said. Everything they try to hide. Everything they didn't expect you to keep. I thought of Michelle. I thought of the flash drive sitting deep in my pocket. I thought of the analysts who had gone missing. And I thought of the CEO calling me trash in front of almost 1,000 people, believing there would be no consequences. I don't have much, I said carefully. Just pieces. Pieces turn into weapons, she said. If you know where they fit. Before I could respond, the man in the coat opened the door. We have a problem, he said. Rena stiffened. What kind of problem? Someone's watching us. Black sedan, 2 cars back. Been there since we left the shop. She didn't look panicked. She looked annoyed. Start the engine, she said. The SUV came to life instantly. Rena turned back to me. This is why I needed to speak to you now. They're not just covering their tracks. They're following anyone who gets close. Anyone who asks the wrong questions. My heartbeat sped up as the SUV pulled away from the curb. I glanced behind us. The black sedan followed. Rena watched my reaction. This is the world your boss dragged you into. And now you have to decide if you want to walk away or if you want answers. I didn't walk into this, I said quietly. They dragged me into it. And they don't let go easily. The sedan changed lanes whenever we did. Unmistakable. Intentional. Do they know I'm with you? I asked. No, Rena said. But they know you're not where they expected you to be. They know you didn't go home. And that makes them nervous. The SUV turned sharply into a narrow side street. The sedan followed again, but slower this time. The tension inside the car grew thick. Why would they follow me? I whispered. Because you're a loose thread, Rena said. And loose threads pull everything apart. The words hit deeper than I expected. I wasn't special. I wasn't some hero. I was just an ordinary employee who knew too much because I had accidentally seen something I wasn't supposed to see. But now, that tiny detail had turned into something dangerous. And it wasn't just about me anymore. What if I help you? I asked slowly. What happens then? Rena met my eyes. Then we exposed the truth. But you need to understand, doing that won't be easy. Or safe. I figured that much. Good, she said quietly. Because once we start, there's no going back. The SUV jerked forward suddenly. The man in the coat cursed under his breath. They're speeding up, he said. If they overtake us, don't let them, Rena said calmly. I gripped the seat as the SUV accelerated harder than before. The sedan stayed behind us but closer now. Too close. My mind raced, not just from fear, but from everything building around me. The missing analysts. Michelle's warning. The flash drive. The fake reports. The humiliation in the auditorium. The realization that the merger wasn't just a business move, it was a wall built to hide everything beneath it. And somehow, I had become the person who could knock it down. I swallowed hard and looked at Rena. What exactly do you think I can do? Her answer came without hesitation. You can destroy their $4.1 billion merger. My breath caught. The SUV took another sharp turn. The sedan followed again. And somewhere inside me, beneath the fear, beneath the shock, beneath the anger, something else started to grow. Resolve. If you want, I can continue the next part with even more tension as the chase intensifies and the conspiracy deepens. The SUV sped through the narrow streets, the engine humming louder with every turn. The man in the dark coat gripped the wheel tightly, eyes locked on the rearview mirror. The black sedan stayed behind us like a shadow that refused to let go. It didn't matter how sharp the turn was or how fast we went, they kept the same distance, calm and steady, like they knew exactly what they were doing. My palms were sweating, even though the air inside the SUV felt cold. Rena sat beside me, completely focused, her tablet still open on her lap. The more I watched her, the more I realized she wasn't scared. She was prepared. It was like she had expected all of this to happen eventually. They won't stop, the driver said. If they get close enough, they'll try to force us to pull over. Then don't let them, Rena answered, her voice steady. I swallowed hard as I looked over my shoulder. The sedan's headlights shimmered against the walls of the buildings, getting brighter and brighter as they inched closer. My chest felt tight. This wasn't the kind of danger I was used to. I had spent years dealing with numbers, files, servers, and deadlines. Nothing like this. Why won't they just leave me alone? I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. Rena turned to me. Because you have something that threatens their entire plan. People who control billions don't leave loose ends. Loose ends. That's all I was to them. Not a person. Not an employee with 5 years of loyalty. Just a thread that could unravel everything. The flash drive Michelle gave me felt heavier in my pocket. Like it carried not just data, but every risk that came with it. The SUV suddenly dipped as the driver took a steep downhill road. The tires screeched, and I grabbed the handle above the door to keep myself steady. The sedan followed again, its headlights cutting through the darkness like knives. We need to get off the main streets, Rena said. Working on it, the driver muttered. The road opened into a wide industrial area, empty warehouses, loading docks, and long, echoing spaces where even the air felt trapped. The perfect place for something to go wrong. The driver made a sharp left and pulled into an alley hidden between 2 tall storage buildings. He switched off the headlights instantly. The SUV fell into sudden darkness. We waited. No one breathed. No one moved. I listened to the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The night felt too quiet now, too still. The kind of silence that made every small noise feel dangerous. The sedan slowed as it passed the alley entrance. The faint glow of its lights spilled across the ground. My muscles tensed as I watched the shadows shift. For a moment, it looked like they were stopping. Then the sedan continued slowly down the road, disappearing into the distance. The driver exhaled. We have a few minutes at most. They'll circle back. Then we use those minutes, Rena said, turning to me. Tell me everything. What did you see before they wiped the system? I hesitated, forcing my thoughts to steady. It started with a flag transaction, I said quietly. Something small at first. Then bigger. Then a pattern. It didn't match the merger reports they were showing us. Rena nodded. Go on. The numbers didn't make sense, I continued. Money moving between accounts that shouldn't exist. Shell companies that were only active for a few hours. Internal memos marked as burn after read. I paused, trying to calm the rising panic in my voice. My boss told me to ignore it. He said I was wasting time. But the analysts saw the same thing. And right after they escalated it, just 2 days later, they were gone. Rena didn't flinch. That's exactly what I needed to hear. I looked at her. You already knew. I knew pieces. Not the full picture. She leaned closer. But you just gave me the missing part. The pattern. The motive. Her voice turned softer. The reason they're hunting you. A sharp noise outside made me jump. The driver instantly peeked through the side mirror. They're coming back, he said. Rena closed her tablet and slipped it into her bag. We move. Now. Move where? I asked, fear rising again. A place they won't expect, she said, opening her door. Somewhere we can use what you know without getting caught. The alley stretched into shadows. The building walls looked endless. I stepped out carefully, my legs trembling. The night air felt colder than before, like it carried a warning. Suddenly, the sound of an engine echoed from the end of the alley. Headlights flashed. The sedan was back. The driver cursed softly. We need to run. Rena grabbed my arm, pulling me toward a side door in one of the warehouses. It looked old and unused, but she pushed a small device against the lock, and it clicked open. How did you? No time, she said. We hurried inside. The door snapped shut behind us, just as the sedan rolled into the alley. Inside the warehouse, everything was quiet. Dusty floors, metal shelves, scattered crates. Only the faint hum of machines in the distance broke the silence. What is this place? I whispered. Safe enough for now, Rena said. But we need to move fast. We weaved between tall stacks of boxes until we reached a metal staircase, leading to an old office above the floor. The door creaked as we entered. The office was dim, but dry and isolated. A perfect hideout. The driver checked the window carefully. They're out there. Searching. I could feel the walls closing in around me. The tension in the room grew heavier with every passing second. Rena turned to me again. There's more, isn't there? Something you didn't say. I hesitated. My throat tightened. There was one file, I said slowly. A restricted access folder the analysts found by accident. The title was just 3 letters. What letters? She asked. SDC. Rena froze. The driver froze. I didn't understand, but something about their reaction made my pulse race harder. You know what that means? I whispered. Yes, Rena said, her voice low. And if that file exists, then the merger isn't just corrupt. It's illegal. Her words hung in the air like a threat. What's in the file? I asked. She took a slow breath. Something big enough to collapse everything. The kind of evidence companies bury forever. A loud bang echoed outside the warehouse. The sedan's doors opened. Footsteps. Multiple footsteps. The driver stepped back from the window, his expression tightening. They found us. Rena grabbed my wrist again. We can't let them get to you. If they do, everything ends here. Where do we go? I whispered, panic rising. She pointed to a narrow back hallway that led deeper into the warehouse. There's a maintenance tunnel. If we get there, we have a chance. The footsteps grew closer. Shadows moved outside the office window. My heartbeat felt like it was trying to break out of my chest. Rena tightened her grip. This is it. Once we step out of this room, there's no going back. The driver opened the office door, just a crack to listen. The echo of voices drifted inside, low, coordinated, searching. I swallowed hard, my entire body trembling. This wasn't just about a merger anymore. This wasn't just about getting fired. This was life or ruin, truth or silence. Everything was building to something huge, something explosive, something I wasn't ready for but couldn't avoid. The shadows drew closer. The voices grew louder. Rena whispered, "Run." And just as we stepped into the hallway, the lights of the warehouse flicked on, every single one of them, flooding the place with blinding brightness. Someone had found the switch. Someone who knew exactly where we were. The real climax was finally taking shape, and I wasn't sure if we were going to survive long enough to reach it. If you want, I can now write the climax section with the highest intensity before delivering the final resolution. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made everyone freeze. For a moment, no one even breathed. Amon's eyes shifted from the window to the door, half expecting it to burst open, but nothing happened. Only the faint echo of someone walking away lingered in the silence. The tension didn't fade, it deepened. He exchanged a look with Zara, who seemed more confused than ever. She tried to read his expression, searching for something that would explain why he suddenly looked as if everything he thought he understood had just changed. Amon slowly stepped away from the desk, his heartbeat thudding in his ears. The discovery he had made moments ago, the file, the coded notes, the strange connection to people he'd never heard of, kept replaying in his mind. It made no sense. None of it matched the story he had been told his whole life. And the voice he heard downstairs earlier, the one he couldn't fully recognize, now felt even more suspicious. It was as if the entire house was hiding secrets inside its walls, and every new sound forced him to question what was real. Zara moved closer to him, her voice soft but steady. She asked him again what he had found, but he avoided the question, not ready to tell her anything without understanding it himself. He didn't want to pull her into something dangerous, not until he knew how deep the situation went. But she watched him carefully, sensing the shift in his behavior. The trust between them was still there, strong enough to keep her standing by his side, but the uncertainty was beginning to weigh on her too. Downstairs, a sudden thud made them both jump. It wasn't loud, but in the thick tension of the house, even the smallest noises felt amplified. Amon moved first, signaling Zara to wait near the staircase while he checked the hallway. As he stepped down, every creak under his feet felt like a warning. The lights flickered, not enough to go out, but just enough to add a sense of unease. When he reached the living room, he found nothing unusual, at least nothing visible. But something felt off. The air felt heavier, like the place was holding on to someone's presence. He walked back toward the stairs, calling Zara softly. She came down halfway, gripping the railing as if preparing herself for whatever he might say. But before he could speak, his phone vibrated. When he checked the screen, a message appeared, not from a known contact, not from a saved number. It was an unknown sender. And the message was only 3 words. "You're not alone." Amon's stomach tightened. He glanced around the room, scanning corners, checking shadows, but nothing changed. Zara's voice shook slightly when she asked what the message said. He didn't answer. Instead, he quietly turned the screen toward her. She stared at the words, her breath catching in her throat. The tension between them grew sharper, like a thin thread stretched to its limit. They weren't sure whether to stay inside or leave, whether the danger was near or just watching from afar. As the silence weighed on them, the doorbell suddenly rang, breaking the stillness like a strike of lightning. Zara flinched. Amon instinctively stepped in front of her, signaling her to move back. The bell didn't ring again, but its impact stayed in the air. Amon took slow steps toward the door, careful and alert. He looked through the peephole, expecting to see someone standing there, but there was nothing. The porch was empty. No footsteps, no shadows, just the night breeze brushing against the quiet street. When he opened the door a few inches, something slid across the floor. A small envelope, plain and unmarked. He picked it up cautiously, feeling the weight inside, but when he opened it, all he found was a single sheet of paper. The message was handwritten, the ink slightly smudged as if the writer had been rushing. "Stop searching." Zara stepped beside him, her voice barely a whisper. She asked who could be sending these messages, why someone would want him to stop. But Amon didn't have an answer. Instead, more questions started forming. Who knew he was digging into information he shouldn't have? How did they know he had even discovered the file? Was someone inside the house earlier without them knowing? He felt the pressure closing in from all sides. Everything around him felt unstable, like the ground was shifting beneath his feet. The mystery that started as a quiet suspicion was now turning into something far bigger and darker. He could sense layers of truth hiding behind layers of lies, and each step forward only revealed more confusion. As they moved back inside, Zara stayed close, her worry growing stronger. She suggested going to someone they trusted, but Aman shook his head. He couldn't involve anyone else. Not yet. Something told him the situation was too fragile, too dangerous to expose without understanding it fully. Besides, he now felt a strong pull to uncover the truth, no matter what warnings came his way. The night dragged on, filled with tension that refused to settle. Aman kept going back to the file in his mind, the hidden messages, the names that didn't belong. Every detail felt like a piece of a puzzle that someone desperately wanted to keep unsolved. But the more he tried to push the thoughts away, the clearer it became. Someone was watching his every move. And then, another realization hit him. This wasn't just about him anymore. Anyone close to him, especially Zara, might be caught in the crossfire. The thought tightened his chest, making the stakes feel higher than ever. He walked to the window again, staring out into the dark street. A faint shadow moved near the edge of the road. It could have been a stray animal, or maybe just his eyes playing tricks on him after hours of stress. But it moved with purpose, too steady to be random. When he blinked, the shadow disappeared behind a parked car. Zara saw the tension in his face and asked what he saw. He didn't answer. He didn't want to scare her, but he also couldn't shake the feeling that whoever was behind the warnings was much closer than they thought. The house felt smaller now, as if the walls were closing in. Both of them sensed that something bigger was coming, something neither of them were prepared for. The conflict that started quietly had now grown into a storm hovering just inches away, ready to break at any moment. But the worst part wasn't the messages, the footsteps, or the shadow outside. It was the feeling that the real threat hadn't shown itself yet. And when it did, everything they thought they knew would change again, this time for good. Aman didn't sleep that night. Every small sound made him look over his shoulder. Every shift of the wind made him think someone was standing outside the window. Zara stayed close, quietly watching him, sensing that the moment they had been dreading was approaching. The air felt heavy, almost warning them that the truth they were about to uncover would change everything. By early morning, Aman finally made a decision. He couldn't sit in the house waiting for someone else to make the next move. He needed answers, real ones. And the only place left to look was the abandoned storage building mentioned in the file he had found, the place someone clearly didn't want him to discover. Zara insisted on going with him, refusing to let him walk into danger alone. Aman tried to argue, but she stood firm, reminding him that whatever this was, they were already in it together. The storage building was old, isolated, and surrounded by tall grass that swayed quietly in the wind. As they approached, Aman felt a strange tightness in his chest. It wasn't just fear, it was the sense that everything that had confused him was about to collide into one moment. When he pushed the door open, the hinges squeaked loudly, echoing through the dark space inside. The room was filled with boxes, dusty shelves, paper scattered across a table. But one thing stood out, a single bulb hanging from the ceiling, glowing dimly. Someone had been there recently. Zara stepped beside him, her voice low. She asked what they were looking for, but before Aman could answer, a figure emerged from the shadows behind the shelves. Aman froze. Zara grabbed his arm, her breath catching in fear. The figure walked forward slowly, stepping into the faint light, and Aman felt the ground slip beneath him. It was the man he had heard outside the house. The voice he couldn't fully recognize. Except now he could. It was someone he once trusted. The stranger removed his hood, revealing a face Aman knew from years ago, an old family friend who had disappeared without a trace. For years, no one knew what happened to him, and now he stood here, staring at Aman as if this moment had been waiting to happen. He didn't speak at first. Instead, he gestured toward the table, telling Aman calmly that he already knew why he was here. Aman stepped closer, anger and confusion mixing inside him. He demanded answers. He wanted to know who sent the messages, who left the warnings, who was watching him. The man finally began to talk. His voice was steady, almost tired. He explained that the file Aman found wasn't meant to harm him, it was meant to protect him. The information inside it connected to something from Aman's past, something he had unknowingly escaped from long ago. The reason the man vanished was because he discovered a group that had been tracking certain families, including Aman's, for reasons still hidden. The man went underground to keep himself and Aman safe. The warnings weren't threats, they were attempts to keep Aman from stepping into danger too soon, before he understood what he was dealing with. But Aman had gone too far, digging deeper than he was supposed to, and now the people watching him had begun to close in. Zara listened in shock, trying to process everything. Aman asked why the truth was hidden from him for so long. The man replied that revealing it earlier would have put him at risk. But now that the puzzle pieces were falling into place, there was no turning back. Just as Aman began to understand the gravity of the situation, a loud bang shook the building. The door slammed shut behind them. The man's expression changed instantly. He told Aman they had been followed. Zara gasped, stepping closer to Aman as heavy footsteps approached from outside. For a moment, panic filled the room. Aman's heart raced as shadows moved across the windows. This was the confrontation he felt coming all along. The man reached into a bag on the table and pulled out a small device, explaining that it contained everything Aman needed to finally break free from the people watching him. He told him to keep it safe and never let it fall into the wrong hands. The footsteps outside grew louder. Suddenly, the windows burst open. Bright lights flooded the room, blinding them. Aman instinctively shielded Zara, pulling her behind him. Voices shouted from outside, telling them not to move. The tension broke in a sharp snap as figures rushed in, surrounding them. But then something unexpected happened. The man who had been helping Aman stepped forward, raising his hands. He revealed that he had already contacted the authorities himself. The people outside weren't the ones hunting Aman, they were here to take down the real threat. The man had led them straight to the evidence stored in the building. In one swift moment, the entire situation flipped. Aman and Zara were rushed outside, protected by officers. Inside, the people who had been tracking Aman were arrested, their operation exposed. The fear, the messages, the shadows watching him, it all made sense now. The warnings came from someone trying to help, not harm. The relief hit slowly, like a weight being lifted after months of pressure. Aman looked at Zara, who exhaled in shaky breaths, finally feeling safe again. The man approached them, explaining that the long nightmare was over and that Aman's family history had been used as part of a larger scheme that was now exposed. But just when Aman thought everything was resolved, the final twist arrived. As they walked to the police vehicles, an officer called out Aman's name. He handed him a sealed envelope recovered from the building. Aman opened it carefully, expecting it to be another record or document connected to the case. Instead, inside was a single photograph, one that made his heart stop. It was a picture of him as a child, standing with someone whose face was crossed out in red ink. And at the bottom, written in neat handwriting, there was a new message. "This isn't over." Aman stared at the photo, a chill running through him. Zara looked over his shoulder, her expression turning pale. The man who had helped him froze as well, recognizing the handwriting instantly. Aman realized the climax wasn't a clean ending. It was a warning, a reminder that even though the main threat had been stopped, someone else was still out there, watching, waiting, and far more dangerous than the ones caught today. The story wasn't ending. It was only shifting into something bigger. Aman kept staring at the photograph as the cold evening wind brushed against his face. The officers were moving around, collecting boxes, marking evidence, talking into their radios, but his focus stayed locked on that picture. The crossed-out face, the neat handwriting, the unsettling message. It felt like a shadow stretching out from the past, refusing to let him go. Zara gently touched his arm, grounding him for a second. He slowly folded the photo and slipped it into his pocket, needing a moment to breathe, to think, to understand what this final twist meant. The man who had been helping him walked over, his expression tight. He looked as though he recognized the handwriting more clearly than he wanted to admit. When Aman asked whose writing it was, the man hesitated before answering. He explained that long before Aman was even old enough to remember, there had been someone connected to his family, someone who believed they had been wronged, someone who had disappeared after a confrontation that happened decades ago. No one had seen or heard from them since. But now, the handwriting made it clear, they were still alive, and they hadn't forgotten anything. Aman took a slow breath. For so long, he thought the people watching him were the main threat. But now he understood they were only a piece of a much bigger story. The person behind the crossed-out face was the one pulling strings in the dark, waiting patiently for the right moment to reappear. Zara could sense Amon's mind spinning, so she reminded him gently that not every warning is a disaster waiting to explode. Sometimes it's just a final echo of something that no longer has the same power as before. The officers finished their search of the building, and the area finally quieted. Amon gave a full statement, explaining everything from the first strange message to the final break-in at his house. Zara stood beside him the whole time, filling in details he missed, holding his hand whenever she felt him tense. The man who had helped them was taken for questioning too, but the officers treated him with respect, knowing he had been the one to uncover the truth that exposed the group tracking Amon. When everything was done, the three of them stepped away from the chaos. The sky had turned darker, with clouds moving gently across the moon. Amon felt drained, but in a strange way lighter. The truth was out. The danger that had followed him silently was finally broken apart. Yes, one last shadow still lingered, but it no longer felt like something waiting to strike. It felt like a thread from a story almost finished. As they walked back toward their car, Zara looked at him and asked what he wanted to do next. Amon thought about everything he had lost and gained. Fear, confusion, warnings, secrets, but also courage, clarity, and a deeper understanding of the people around him. He realized that if he kept running, the past would keep chasing him. The only way to move forward was to stop giving fear the final say. He told Zara he wanted to return to his ordinary life, not because nothing happened, but because everything happened. He didn't want to live in hiding or wait for another warning. He wanted to rebuild his days, piece by piece, and not let the darkness decide how he lived. Zara smiled softly, telling him this was exactly why she stayed by his side, because even in the hardest moments, he never lost his sense of direction. Before they left, the man approached them one last time. He apologized for not revealing the truth earlier, but reminded Amon that everything he did was to keep him out of danger. He handed Amon a small notebook, explaining that it contained the rest of the information he had gathered over the years. Details, names, connections, dates. He told Amon that even though the main threat was gone, this notebook might help him understand the bigger picture one day. Amon took it, feeling the weight of past and future in his hands. The ride home was quiet at first, with the tire noise humming softly beneath them. Amon kept replaying the events in his mind, stitching every moment together. But after a while, the tension eased, and the silence became peaceful instead of heavy. Zara leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered that everything would be okay now. And for the first time in a long time, he believed it. When they reached home, Amon noticed how different the house felt. It wasn't haunted by fear anymore. The rooms felt normal again, warm even. He sat on the couch and opened the notebook the man had given him. Zara sat beside him, reading over his shoulder. The pages were filled with years of observations, patterns, and notes written in a rushed hand. By the time he reached the last page, Amon understood something important. The person who left the photograph was tied to the past, not the future. Yes, they might still be out there, but their power came from old grudges, not new threats. And Amon was no longer the unaware person he once was. He wasn't someone easily targeted anymore. Over the next week, Amon slowly returned to a normal routine. He fixed his broken window, replaced the locks, and cleaned the rooms that once felt unsafe. He went back to work on a smaller schedule, wanting time to breathe. His colleagues welcomed him warmly, unaware of the storm he had survived. Zara helped him settle back into daily life, and little by little, the heaviness faded. The officers eventually contacted him with updates. The group tracking him was officially dismantled. The evidence recovered from the building revealed everything they had been doing for years. They confirmed that the unknown person behind the crossed-out photograph hadn't been involved with them. That figure still existed somewhere out of reach, but the police assured Amon they would continue investigating. One evening, Amon and Zara decided to sit outside in the backyard. The air was calm, the sky clear, and for the first time in months, the world felt stable. Amon thought about everything he had feared, everything he had discovered, and all the people who stood with him. He realized the journey wasn't just about escaping danger. It was about learning who he really was when everything familiar collapsed. Zara asked if he was still scared of the person behind the message. Amon smiled a little and said he wasn't scared anymore because now he had something even stronger than fear, truth. The people who tried to control him were gone. The mysteries from his past were no longer hidden. And even if one last shadow existed out there, Aman knew he could face it when the time came. He looked at Zara, the softness in her eyes, and felt grateful. He understood now that real strength didn't come from being fearless. It came from walking through fear with the right people beside him. As the night deepened, he took the photograph from his pocket one last time. The crossed-out face didn't shake him anymore. Instead,